We have had over 80 years of Marvel Comics, so it's unsurprising that we've had tons of twists and turns and unexpected moments. Writers have used some of these moments to drive sales, and some have been part of powerful stories with years of planning and writing attached. Welcome back, Nerd Squad. Today we'll be counting down some of these epic and powerful moments as we count down the top 10 most shocking moments in Marvel history. Part 2. That's right, Part 2. So if you haven't checked out the Part 1 to this list, you can do so by clicking up over here. Do it, click it, do it. As always, be sure to stick around to the end of this list where I will have some bonus content coming your way in the form of comment responses. But for now, let's get counting. Number 10. Loki returns. Although Loki is a trickster that we all expect to return eventually, when he came back as a woman, many fans were shocked at his new form. Though mythologically speaking, Loki is known as an accomplished shapeshifter, and even in Marvel some of this has carried over. Still, the question remained of why this form? While Loki gave his own excuses, it was later revealed that he'd hijacked Sif's body to achieve his Lady Loki form, and would be forced later on to relinquish it. He would also die and return as Kid Loki, who had no knowledge of the villain his older self had been. And now, shockingly enough, but not if you're a fan of Norse mythos as I said, we have a version of Loki that can easily change between all of his forms at will. Pretty cool. Number 9. Wolverine defeats Hulk. Maybe not one of the most shocking moments per se, but definitely gave us a shocking panel. If you are wondering where one of the images on our thumb came from, that would be from Savage Wolverine number 5. Hulk and Wolverine have come to blows multiple times in the comics, but this is one of their most brutal fights, though not as brutal as their battle in Old Man Logan, in my opinion. During this story, Wolverine was attracted to Savage Land due to a device calling out to others to create chaos, so that an ancient monster from beneath the island could be released. Kind of a Cthulhu-looking space thing? Wolverine managed to get his wits about him, but was met there shortly after by an out-of-sorts Hulk. Wolverine figured the best way to take out Hulk was by pouncing on him and sending his adamantium claws clean through his brain. Alas, this didn't help that much, and the monster still escaped its prison, soaring off-world to meet more alien monsters out in space. Oh dear. Number 8. Hulk becomes immortal. We talked about Hulk's death by Hawkeye's arrow in part 1 of this list, but what we didn't talk about is how even after that shocking death, he just kept coming back. So many times in fact that it gave writer Al Ewing an idea. What if Hulk actually couldn't die? This concept allowed him to write a story which brought us back to the dark origins of Hulk, a man who would originally turn into a monster when the sun set. This was the original transformation story for Hulk, not based on emotions turning him into some sort of psychological horror, but based on old monster stories like that of Frankenstein, werewolves, and Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. When we got the Immortal Hulk, this was how we were introduced to the big green hero slash monster, as an immortal being that when the sun sets, even when Banner had been killed, would rise again. Even though this concept was the original concept for the character, it was one we'd become so removed from that it shocked readers in a delightful way, reinventing the character they'd come to love by taking us back to his roots. Number 7. She-Hulk defends STARFOX. She-Hulk has always been a huge defender of superheroes. After all, she is one herself. But everyone was still caught somewhat off guard when she signed up to defend STARFOX, aka Eros, Thanos' brother. Eros had been an Avenger and a hero, but was being charged with assaulting and manipulating others using his pheromone powers of seduction. Some Avengers stood beside him, and some preferred to keep their names out of the headlines, while others still denounced him. But She-Hulk decided to defend him in court. What was more shocking to Jennifer was when she discovered that although he had not manipulated her into sleeping with him, StarFox had manipulated her and John Jonah Jameson, aka Man-Wolf, into marrying one another, believing it was best for both of them. Still, She-Hulk would be forced to defend him in a more cosmic court of law later on, and would of course move to divorce Man-Wolf, believing their relationship to be a complete sham. Which kinda sounds like it was? Seemed like they were about to break up when he made them fall in love with each other. Number 6. Dr. Doom becomes Iron Man. Following the events of Doom's battle world, Doom realized that not even becoming a god had made him feel any sense of accomplishment. Feeling empty inside, Doom reflected perhaps it was his approach that had always been off, and decided to set off on a path of redemption, attempting to become one of the good guys. As a symbol of turning over a new leaf, he shed his armor and became an ally of Tony Stark, a man he'd always secretly admired. When Tony was left in a coma following the events of the Second Civil War, Doom surprised readers, shocking all of us Doom fans in a good way by becoming infamous Iron Man. As Iron Man, Doom was a force to be reckoned with and one all villains seemed terrified of, and for good reason. Having Doom as a rival villain was hard enough, but having him as a hero meant that they would need to come together just to defend themselves against his might. And even then, these villains failed. Doom single-handedly took them out during a meeting where they'd all gathered to discuss the problem of Doom himself. Number 5. Death of Spider-Man. I'm not sure what was more shocking, when Spider-Man died the first time in Ultimates and had to immediately be resurrected because the timing had not been properly communicated, or when he died the second time with all the grandiose surrounding his death. The Ultimate Universe of 1610 was full of shocking moments, Spider-Man's death among them. In reality, the creatives wanted Spider-Man dead because they felt he was too similar to his 616 counterpart, and they were trying to get rid of all the characters who they felt were just too similar to the main continuity versions. Still, the death of Spider-Man made for a shocking title, even if it was in an alternate universe, as Peter Parker's Spider-Man was still considered the darling of Marvel, no matter which reality you're talking about. Number 4. Black Widow betrays Iron Man. Another Ultimate story that shocked many fans was the whole relationship and then subsequent betrayal between fellow Avengers Iron Man and Black Widow. On Earth 1610, these two were about to get married when Black Widow revealed her true colors. In this reality, she was a double agent and killed Jarvis before Tony could even stop her. Fortunately, he still had override systems in place on the nanobots he'd given Natasha, which helped her to control the armor he'd gifted her as an engagement gift. He used these nanobots to knock Natasha out, and when she came to the hospital, Clint Barton, aka Hawkeye, arrived to take her out with an arrow to the head. In betraying her teammate, she'd also gotten Clint's family, which he had in Ultimates, killed, so he was out for revenge on multiple levels. Number 3. Iron Man, evil all along. Dun dun dun. The Crossing was a super out there storyline, one where it was revealed that Tony Stark had actually been a sleeper agent all along for Kang the Conqueror, who we later learned wasn't even really Kang but was a Mortis in disguise. Oh, comics. Tony went around being a huge villain for a while until he lay dying, inspired by his younger self to reform before he passed away. His younger self had been brought to the present by the Avengers to stop their version of Tony. Yeah, it was a time. I hope the Avengers learned that bringing a younger, less experienced Tony to defeat an older version who is a more accomplished genius is not really the best way to go in this scenario. Number 2. Thor gets hella pregnant. When did this happen? You guessed it, in the Ultimate Universe. Should just call this top 10 Marvel shocking moments of the Ultimate Universe. In the Ultimate Universe, however, Thor and Hela do not appear to be related, so at least there is that. But still, this is a shocking story for those who just happened to pick up a comic off the rack at the time. What happened was Thor wanted to leave Valhalla. In order to do so, he had to give Hela an heir, which was a term he agreed to. Yikes. Number 1. Return of Bucky Barnes. Bucky Barnes was one of the exceptions when it came to comic book character deaths. With most characters, there is always the expectation that the day will come where they will inevitably return, no matter how finite their death may have seemed or how many times the character has seemingly perished. However, Bucky's death was one of the few that was accepted as permanent. In truth, it had happened because Marvel wanted to move away from the idea of child sidekicks. Stan Lee especially was not a fan of that concept. In fact, you'll notice a good many of Marvel's heroes have been without kid sidekicks throughout Marvel history because of this. In 2005, Ed Brubaker made comic book history when he gave us the story of the Winter Soldier, resurrecting Bucky as a brainwashed assassin, bringing back one of the few characters who we expected to stay dead for good, alongside Marvel's Uncle Ben. But don't worry, Ed Brubaker did not bring back Uncle Ben. Uncle Ben's still pretty dead. What's more, Brubaker created an ending that could easily allow us to keep Winter Soldier or discard him based on how fans received this story. For Brubaker, the reasoning as well was that if Cap could have come back, then why couldn't Bucky? Also, we never saw him die on panel, so. Fortunately, this story that he told, while shocking, was well received, and so Bucky Barnes as the Winter Soldier returned for good. Woohoo! Thank you so much for watching. What were some of the moments that shocked you the most in Marvel Comics? Which superheroes in general have you found the most twisty and turny? Let us know in the comments below. And speaking of comments, it's time to turn to some comments from one of our latest videos, Top 10 Dark Origin Stories That Really Happened. Koptika comments, scientists have a seriously screwed up life in the world of comics. Wow, they definitely do. Though to be fair, so do most people of various professions in comics. It's kinda just like a crazy world to live in, I think. King Drago 101 writes, Amanda looking spiffy. Think Jessica Jones would fit right into the world of The Boys, to be honest. I could see that. Her origins are definitely dark enough for it. Also, we need a villain or hero who is really a villain in The Boys with similar powers to Kilgrave. That would be mighty icky. As a side note, I also love the word spiffy, so thanks for using that word. Odari Johannes responds, the Bat jacket is awesome. You totally have that Batgirl vibe going on. Thank you! I love that jacket, it makes me feel like a superhero. I also love repping Babs. And that's all the time we have for comments today. Be sure to comment below for a chance to have your thoughts and feels shouted out in a future video. This has been Top 10 Nerd, and I'm your host Amanda McKnight, reminding you to stay nerdy, YouTube.